Hello, everybody. Welcome to Master Email Essentials. I'm really glad you're all here, and you all are going to be glad you're here, too. I'm Carol Rosenbaum. I think in your invitation email, you heard my background, that I'm a senior trainer with Brody, and I'm a professional writer and producer of video documentaries, and I'm proud to say I have won 2 Emmys for my writing and for my producing.
You go, girl.
Thank you. And you all are from different industries. We're an intimate group of 7 or 8. Not everybody who signed up can be with us today, so all of you are going to be getting a recording of this. So you really don't have to take notes because you can listen to it again on the recording. I want us to be really dynamic today and interactive. We're going to have some activities, some exercises to do together, and we're going to explore how to write really strong emails that get opened and get read and get the results that you want. Normally this is a 2-hour webinar, so we're going to just hit the high points today in our 1 hour. And to help us be really interactive and use WebEx's interactive tools, Justin, who's our producer, is going to give us some clues here about how to do that. So that way we can make the most of this moment. So Justin, do you want to do that quickly?
Absolutely. So the very first thing I'm going to talk about is the fact that I'm going to be listening. If there's background noise coming from any of you, I'll either mute you, or to be able to mute yourselves, next to your name in the participant window, which is located on the right side of the screen, there's a little microphone with a line through it. And if you click on that, it'll turn orange, and that way you're muted. And if you click on it again, you're unmuted. So if you know there's going to be background noise, you can mute yourselves, or if I hear background noise, I'll be muting you. The second thing we're going to talk about are 2 interactivity tools. The first one is going to be the hand raise function. So let's say there's something you want to ask Carol, but she's speaking and you don't want to interrupt. You can either press the little hand button, which is located right next to the microphone. Let's all practice that. The little hand, click on it, and a hand will appear, and I'll be able to see that you have your hand raised. Fantastic. Great. And you click on it again once you have your question answered, and that way we'll know you don't have a question anymore. The second is going to be the chat function. So if your chat window isn't already open, at the top of the window, there are little icons, participants, and the second one is chat. So when you click on chat, it'll open up a chat box. Now, sometimes it says send to, and it should be selected everyone like it shows in the picture, because it might be set to me privately or Carol privately. But if you want to ask a question, we suggest that you send it to everyone because they may have the same question as you. Okay, and that's all I have to say. I'm going to pass it back to Carol.
All right, thank you, Justin. I will also be calling on you, so don't be shy. It'll make it much more interesting. And I will also ask you to ask me questions. If you don't want to raise your hand and you just want to interrupt me, it's okay with me. You can do it. We're just a small enough group. This is a very interesting quote. Good use of language is the supreme example of an intelligent mind. When you write and when you speak and you do it well, you show your intelligence, which is very important in business and in life. So our agenda today is going to help you show that intelligence when you're writing email. We're going to talk very briefly about why it's important to write well. We're going to cover the email essentials, the rules of what we call netiquette, and then we'll do a quick summary at the end. So why write well? For emails, for reports, why write well? Well, if you don't write well, things get deleted. They get trashed. And not only that, but research shows that if you don't write well, people think you're not educated, or you're not disciplined, or you're not smart. So it's super important to be able to write clearly and write well. And it will allow you to grow your career. It'll boost your own position in the company, to grow the company, to grow your career. So let's talk about some email netiquette guidelines. They're not really rules. They're an accepted code of behavior. And the foundation are basically 3 points here. Always use basic courtesy. Now, I know you know this, but a lot of people just don't. We're so used to texting and Instagram and things that make us often not courteous. So always use basic courtesy. And always respect your readers. And this is very interesting because most of you represent global companies. So the cultures are different obviously in different countries. The references are different. So we have to be careful and sensitive about not just using American references. And always, always be ethical. Always be ethical. Did you know this? 90% of our communication at work is done through email, but 30% of emails are poorly written. That's a lot. That means there's a lot of miscommunication and poor communication. So we're here today to change that. What are the best emails? Yes, was there a question there?
I was just going to say, could you put the stats up again for me, please? It's D.
Yes, hi Dee.
Thank you.
90% of communications are done through email, and 30%, excuse me, are poorly written, unfortunately.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, best email practices. That's what the rest of our webinar is going to be about today. Remember this, and I know we hear about it in the news all the time. Emails are legal documents. We've seen it with the George Washington Bridge. You see in the yellow here, time for some traffic problems at Fort Lee. Remember that in New Jersey with Governor Christie. Emails never go away, so the basic, and they can be subpoenaed. So the basic rule is don't write anything in an email that you wouldn't want to write on a postcard or you wouldn't want to write to your client. So that's kind of a basic foundational rule. The first rule that really will make emails work well for you is to focus your subject line. Make it very specific, make it grab attention, because a lot of people have said to me, managers specifically, if I get an email and the subject line is general rather than specific, I don't open it. So this is one of the first reasons that you have to, a very good reason to focus that subject line. And let's explore that a little bit more. So for example, tomorrow's meeting rescheduled, and here's the date and the time. How often do you get emails that say tomorrow's meeting? I mean, you hear that all the time, you read that all the time, and it's not specific, so not only does it befuddle you, but when you go back, you can't retrieve it very well because there could be lots of emails that say tomorrow's meeting. So always be very specific, and you'll be able to not only know what the email's about, but to retrieve it.
Also,
your report, yes.
Carol, hi, it's Dee again.
Yes,
I just think that some people don't read it the day that it was sent. So tomorrow's meeting you could read today, which is actually tomorrow and yesterday's, so you don't know what tomorrow is.
Very good point, exactly. So it really is important to have a specific subject line. And here's the second one, your report needs revisions. Again, rather than just saying your report, being specific. And this grabs attention. I'm out sick today and need your help. So let's try an activity. Write down very briefly what you think might be a good subject line that you just received or that you wrote, and let's just share it with each other quickly. So take a few seconds.
Do we write it in the chat?
you know, you can write it on a piece of paper and call it out, or you can type it in the chat, whichever you prefer. And as soon as you have one, you can raise your hand or just call it out. An example of a good specific subject line. Okay, who has one? Dee, do you have one?
I'm just going into my, I was going to say I've got lots of them, but I wasn't on my email. So
okay.
One that says, again, it goes back to what you were talking about, that this says today, courtesy reminder. And then but today could mean, who knows?
Any day. So be specific about the date.
Exactly.
Today, use the date or use the day.
Here's an interesting one. Your marketing isn't working, question mark?
Well, now, I like that. Do you like that?
I do, because it really rings true to, well, at least to me, in a marketing sense, and the interest, like, okay, so is this person going to tell me, this was a question mark, so, and I'm thinking like, well, yeah, you're right, so I'm hoping he's going to give me some tools, so I'm going to open it.
And I like that because it attracts attention. It grabs your attention. It makes you think, it makes you pay attention to it, so that's good. Let's have one more. How about Bruce? Do you have one you can share with us?
Yes, I have new hire cutoff date for next training class, 4/1/16.
Good, very good. So that's a good one, and it has the date, and it's very specific. So you get the idea. A lot of people just they write too quickly. They don't think about a subject line. It's your first strong reason that people have to open those emails. So good, moving on. The second main point, this is not a mystery novel. Put your main point first. I want to know how many of you have suffered through digging through emails to find the point. Can I hear that? Is that something that you all have experienced?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. And so it's annoying when you read it and you don't know what the main point is. So put the main point first, up front, right at the top. Simple and clear. And you can include what we call the call to action. If you want people to do something as a result of your email, to take some action, then put that right up front too. You can put it in your subject line if you have room, and if not, just put it up front. So let's see, what do we mean by a call to action up top? So here are a few examples. Send me your final reports by Monday. All right, that's the action with the date. Discuss this with your team and design 3 proposals. So there's the main point, and there's the call to action. Discuss and design. And what's the bottom line? Respond by tomorrow. So again, you're asking people to do something, and you put it right up front. Don't put it at the end, so we have to read through to get the punchline. Put it right up front. This is an interesting exercise that when you first look at it, doesn't seem to relate to emails, but in fact it does. And we're going to be looking at a few billboards. Normally in a 2-hour webinar, we look at about 5 or 6 billboards that that as you're driving along the road, you might see on the side of the road. Today we're just going to look at 2 and see whether they're effective or not effective, and you'll see immediately how they relate to writing good email. They really have to do with clutter. So pretend that you're driving along the highway. You only have a few seconds to read those billboards before your eyes are back on the road. Here are the criteria I'd like us to use to evaluate whether these billboards are good. One of them is, does it grab your attention? Does it deliver a clear message to you? And does it motivate action? Sorry, that seems a little low there. So grab attention, deliver a clear message, motivate action. Let's look at the first billboard. Here it is.
Whoa.
Yes, That's what I say. Whoa. Okay, we're going to come back to it in a minute. Just think about yes or no. Again, there are just going to be two. Do you like it? Is it effective? Or is it not? Just think yes or no. And we'll talk about it in a minute. Now look at this one. Is it effective? Yes or no? All right, now let's talk about effective or not effective. Let's look at this one. Was it effective? What do you think, folks?
It's, to me, it's B again. It's full of clutter, and I just, I mean, I don't know where to look, and the date would just, I don't know if it's June 16th, June 30th. I don't care.
Right, right, and it's just, it's so busy. Bruce, did I hear your voice there?
Yeah, I voted a no on that one. My eyes first gravitated to the NC Thunder, but if it's real quick, I don't see anything else.
That's right. You really don't, and you just it's not focused. You really don't know where to look. So it's not effective. Just too cluttered. Oftentimes, folks, have you gotten emails that are like this? Lots of detail, cluttered, don't know where to focus. And can you see the communication just doesn't happen here? As opposed to this one, do you think this was effective?
Yes.
Yes, why?
Yeah.
What did you like about it that made it effective?
The double entendre, number one. Number two, it's clean.
Okay, good. Clean and crisp and elegant, you know right away. You look at this sparkly diamond, you see engage her, you know where to go. So you know where to look. And if you want to take action, if you want to get engaged, you might go there to buy that ring. So yes, you see the difference between the two. And that is the same idea with an email. So to make a billboard or an email message effective from the reader's perspective, it has to be easy to understand. It has to be relevant to their priorities. And let me ask you before we go on with the next point, do you honestly think about your reader and what your reader's priorities are, what is important to them, the WIIFT, what is in it for them? When you write an email, do you think about that?
Yes.
Yes? Who said yes?
I did D.
D, good. And can you give us an example of, D, of how priorities might be different depending on your email audience?
Oh, well, I think, too, depending on if you're doing internal and external, you have to take those both into consideration.
Right.
And so if it's relevant, that you have to make certain when you grab their attention that the external people will read it differently than your internal people.
Yes. And if you're writing to upper management, you might think about what their priorities are. What would be relevant for them, as opposed to maybe a team member who might have different priorities. So thinking of the priorities of your audience is an extremely effective way to write a good, strong email. What is relevant to them? And it will be different with different audiences. So that's key. To have a clear call to action, if there's something you want them to do, makes the message effective. Visual appeal. We're going to be talking about this in a few minutes. What do I mean by visual appeal, do you think? Candace, what do you think?
Excuse me, not being cluttered like that, billboard was.
Right.
Having something that is engaging but also clear. And there was much less information on the second billboard, and I thought that was, really well done.
Right.
So very similar to the billboard, obviously, not such a cluttered subject line, and then just, the point of the message should be probably at the top of the email.
And notice too the white space here, and there was space in the engage her one too. Space allows the mind to absorb. If it's cluttered, it gives you a headache, and you can't really absorb it all. And then you want to answer your reader's questions. You want to anticipate what they might be and answer those questions simply in a good email. All right, we talked in the invitation, we talked about the invitation to join this webinar. We talked about giving you a template. And here's a template that works for all emails, a template, a basic model. However, it works especially well for complex emails where you're expressing complex ideas. So the first one is a summary statement where that's the main point. So you think about your email, what's my main point? Then there's the what. Is it easy to understand, you want to make it easy to understand. What means data, evidence? What's going to support your main point? Then there's the so what. Why is it relevant? Why is this important? What's the benefit? Then the now what, which are next steps, or the clear call to action. And then there's the thank you. Let's see an example to make this real and specific. This is an example, it's actually a real example from a company that we've worked with who resettles clients, who resettles their employees abroad. They're a global company, and they help all sorts of companies settle employees who are going to be working in other countries. So this one happens to be in China. So the subject line at the top of the email is, let's expand our China orientation for our people. All right, here's the summary statement. There are several new concerns for companies deploying talent in China that require an expanded orientation. That's the basic bottom line. That's the main point. Now let's do this using the template. Let's do the what. In other words, what are the major concerns that need the strong orientation expansion? Well, here's 4 of them. Deteriorated properties, language barriers, difficulty in school selection, and assignee misconception that it's easy to move in. So that's the what. The what supports the major concerns. All right, what's the so what? If we don't expand, clients will be frustrated and we'll lose them. So that's the so what. That's the important part here. Now, what do we have to do now? Immediate action, expand the orientation next month and correct misconceptions, and then the thank you. So you see that, now this takes a while, folks. This is a complex email, and it takes thinking and planning. But when you put it in this, when you plug it into this template, practically every complex email you write will fall into this template, and it will be, I think, very, very helpful for you. But it also, this template also works for emails that are not quite so complex, the kinds that we really write a lot every day. So, for example, here's a summary statement, a lot different here. Our project needs revisions. That's the main point here. So what's the what? How do we support that? It needs revisions because there are too many unnecessary background details. There's some awkward phrasing. It needs more examples. The so what? What's going to happen? Jen is going to revise it and send it to you for your approval. And now what? Review those revisions and the thank you. So you see that even in something that's not so complex, you can organize it in these categories, and it makes it very, very clear for the reader. So let's practice writing a short summary statement, really a main point that you can give us as an example. For example, something that would update a manager or a team member about a current project. So you can do this in the chat, or you can just do it with pen and paper there and just read it out to us. So take a couple seconds, to just write what would be a good example of a summary statement. And as soon as you're ready, let me know, and I might just call on you. See, you knew this was going to be fun. All right, who has one? Katie, how about you? Do you have one to share with us? I'm not sure Katie's there. Candace? How about D?
I just think on this one, it would be really quick for me. When I say update, I would say, first of all, what the project was. So let's say, I'm just going to go, let's say, to this webinar. So on updating a manager on a current project, I said, RE 322 webinar on email writing is a go. I'll see you at 11:30.
Good. All right. Good. That's specific, and it's it's the bottom line. That's good. So that's one way to handle it. Who else has a summary statement? Basically,
this is Candace. I was on mute. I apologize.
No problem.
I put in the chat window, I just wrote, regarding our PCA development project, I wanted to update you and let you know that we had to push the launch timeline to June 2016. Thank you. Okay, good. All right, good. And then you would when you go further down in that, and you do the, for example, the what, you might say why you had to push the timeline. And you would give the details, and then you would say, so why is this important? It's important because we have to put off something, maybe. I'm just making this up. And now what? Now let's move ahead, let's do it, and make sure we meet that deadline. Thank you very much. So so all those categories will fall into place once you have your main summary statement. And then the what, the details, the so what, why is it important, the now what with the next steps, and then the thank you. So good, folks, very good. All right, moving along. Keeping emails short and direct. Is this a problem for you? What do you do when your emails are not short, when you get them? What do you see when you see a long email and you open it up and you see like 5 paragraphs? What do you feel? What do you do and what do you feel? Let me hear from you.
Delete.
You toss it?
Delete.
You delete, right. Right. I have a colleague who writes such long emails in such detail, and the little bar on the right that moves down as you read is, I've read 3 paragraphs and the bar is still towards the top. And I put it off. Do you put it off till later sometimes?
Yep.
And, does later ever come? Sometimes it doesn't, or it doesn't come at the right time. So short and direct are, again, one of the best ways to get your emails opened and read, and read right then, and not put off till later. This is just a quick example of, it's a real email that we've seen here. So look, read it over just quickly. It's a short activity. Read this over, scan it quickly, and tell me what you think about this. So what's your first impression as you read that paragraph?
I couldn't even pay attention to it. It seemed like so out of sorts. I feel like I wanted to go back to the beginning and figure out what even the gist of the email was.
Right, and I think one of the reasons is that there are just a lot of unnecessary words. So
abbreviations too.
I'm sorry, what? Oh yes, the past process.
A lot of abbreviation.
Yeah. So in a 2-hour webinar, I would have people try to rewrite this But for today, what we're going to look at is the way you can rewrite it. Same ideas, but look how much shorter. Look how much shorter this is. Just a reminder about our meeting next week, the date. We'll focus on issues with the past process. We can touch on reports. Call me with any questions. What a difference. Then you really see when it's short and direct what the meat is of this email. So that's, again, a good example of keep it short. And that also means sentences, too. Short sentences as well. All right, we talked about visual appeal earlier, and here's a little more exploration of visual appeal. Creating an easy-to-read layout. Again, with the reader in mind, a layout. If you use headings, that can be really helpful. If you use bullet points, as long as you don't use too many, that can be really helpful in displaying information and making it easy to read. Using boldface. How many of you do use these, headings or bullets or boldface? Do you generally use these in your emails?
Yep. Depends on the length, Carol.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't do headings if I were just sending an email to you, say, I'll see you Thursday for lunch at 12:30 at whatever.
Yes, right. Bruce, did you want to say something?
No, I'll just have to agree with that. It's
okay.
Different fonts and different colors of the font too.
Yes, and underlining can help, and here's color. Right, when is a good time to use color, Bruce, since you mentioned it?
Making sure that's the points you definitely want to make sure stands out, that they walk away with that message.
That's right. That's right. So sometimes I will use blue or I will use red, and it absolutely jumps out. You have to be careful not to annoy people with too much color, so you use it judiciously. But it can be very effective in calling attention to a point. And that white space. Yes, I heard somebody breathing.
I was just going to say, this is Katie. We use a lot of our emails go over the cell phones, and so color doesn't come through. So probably, it's depending on who your audience is. That's probably one that you sparingly.
Okay. All right. Does bold come through when you send it on your?
I don't think bold goes through either. So we use a lot of bullets and underline.
So bullets, underlining, and white space. Yeah. As we said earlier, if you cram it all together, think of that billboard that was cluttered and unfocused. If you cram it together, your reader doesn't understand as well. And you're writing for the reader. So leave some white space, and it clears your head, the reader's head, and allows them to see the separate ideas a lot better. Here is an example of a somewhat complex email, and without worrying about reading it, just look, if you would, at what tools do you see that we've just talked about, creating an easy-to-read layout? What does this writer use that grabs your attention right away and makes it easier to read?
Just headlines.
Headlines, right? What else? Right. Underline, you've got there. You've got a color. This leads to high turnover rate. So this is a very organized email, and we have an expression we like to say, plan for the scan. It allows the reader to quickly scan and get the gist of the meaning, and then go back and read the details. But do you see how those bold categories allow you to do that?
Can I go back? I don't know the woman who talked about emails on iPhones and iPads. And I don't know the answer to this. Maybe she does. Who was it? Candace who mentioned that? Who was talking about iPhones?
It was not me.
It was who? Sorry. Anyway, I'm asking, how about italics? Does that come through?
it doesn't on my phone. Does it on yours, Katie?
I don't think it does. So I think the bullets in the white space are definitely helpful for the scanning on cell phones.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, good. And the other thing I like to do, I like to write, if I have 3 questions for somebody, I put that in my subject matter, the subject line. 3 questions, please answer. And sometimes I get 3 answers, and sometimes I only get 2. But I have more luck and more chance of getting my 3 answers if I say I have 3 questions. If I just say I have a few questions, very often they all don't get answered. So I find this is an effective tool. Say, if you have a couple questions, say how many you have. 3, good. White space, we said, is very helpful for understanding. Double space between paragraphs. If you're writing paragraphs, double space. It is amazing what a double space can do and how it relieves any tension in the reading and allows communication, allows the reader to understand a lot better rather than just keeping everything single space. Font should be easy to read, not difficult, not scripty, not too small, but the Goldilocks place, just right. And what font do you all use? What size font and what kind of font is good for email? Can I hear
Arial.
some? Arial's very good, yes? What else?
Like
Georgia.
12 font.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said Arial, but I usually like to put it on the size 12.
Yes, size 12. The smallest should be 10. Don't use smaller than 10, and 12 is a really good size. I really like that the best. And Arial is good. So as far as the name of a font, Calibri is also good. And I like Times New Roman, although some people think they want to use that for reports, but I like the font, and I think that's
How about Georgia?
fair. I don't know that font. Is it clear and crisp?
I like it. I could. I don't know if I can send it to you, but that's what I use most of the time.
Okay. Well, if you can send it, good. Otherwise, we'll just look it up, Georgia. If it's nice and clear and crisp, that's the main thing.
Okay.
And the size, so that's good. Yes, please eat grandma. This is the point about using good grammar and good punctuation, because if you don't, people, remember what happens, what people think. They think you're not educated, or you're not disciplined, or you're not taking the time to do it. And we're so used to this with texting. So how would you change it? This just proves why commas are important. How would you change this to read differently?
After eat, comma.
Please eat, grandma, right. Oh, what a difference. And commas save lives. All right. I like this. Try it again. Look at the difference here. Woman without her man is nothing. Look at the 2 ways to do this. Woman without her man is nothing. And then if you want to say the absolute opposite, you do use the colon. Woman without her man is nothing. You see the difference in punctuation. So it just shows why it's important to be careful about your punctuation, be careful about your grammar, and go over it at the end. We're going to talk about the importance of proofreading. Don't send emails that are sensitive or confidential. And why is this? Tell me. Why is this one of the rules of Netiquette?
I think part of it.
Yeah, keep going. Who was that? Who was answering? All right. Well, I don't know who was talking, but the fact is that a lot of emails get forwarded, even if you don't want them to be forwarded. So
can I interrupt you for a second? We work with a lot of confidential materials, but I use a disclaimer at the end. If it should go to the incorrect email or wrong person, that would help prevent any, possible lawsuits or anything, correct?
Yes, I think that definitely helps. And if you have to send confidential information, then you want to send it in as safe a way as possible.
Right.
And I think using the disclaimer helps, but it's just a reminder to be very thoughtful. If you don't have to send it confidentially, then don't.
Yep.
So just be real careful about that. And it can really hurt people. Yes, Bruce.
I just had a question. If you have to send out confidential information, would it be better to put in the subject line, confidential, do not forward, and then say whatever it's about?
I think that's an excellent idea. Put it that way, and then you know you can't guarantee that that's going to happen, but it'll help the chances of it being confidential and not being forwarded. So thank you for that. It's an excellent idea. And some companies have a way of sending confidential information, have a platform, so you should explore whether your company has that as a way, because if it's sensitive, it can really hurt people, and that's what this slide shows, that it can hurt people. And along these lines, what do you do if you're angry? Have you written angry emails before? What do you do when you're angry about something?
I write a fabulous "I hate you" email, but I don't have anything to. I don't have anything to the send person. So I just write it and make myself feel better, and then I delete it. Okay.
So in other words, you take out the email address at the top. Exactly. You delete that so that you can write it, and you don't have to worry about sending it by mistake.
But they're fun to write.
And do you feel better when you write them?
Oh my gosh, you have no idea. It's better than a glass of wine almost.
Well, as long as you feel better, that's good, and as long as you don't send it. I have had that problem. I have once made a mistake, and I didn't delete the recipient at the top, and I wrote this angry email, and I hit send by mistake. And it took me about 6 months to repair that relationship. So if you ever have to do that, take out that address at the top so that you don't hit send by mistake. That's an excellent idea. And then putting do not forward, is excellent. So think before you forward also. Sometimes we ask people, you can ask people, is it okay to forward? Make sure it is okay to forward. Think about it before you do that. All right, we call this the 3-4 rule. Break a long email thread with a phone call. There's an idea. Have you all had this experience back and forth and with several different people? You're all this long email thread. You haven't changed the subject line either, so you don't know what's going on, and it can be very confusing. Have you had that experience?
Yeah, but the only thing that I like is, because I deal with so many different accounts, is that you can refer back to email easier than a conversation when you have to go back to something a month ago. So it's nice to have the long emails sometimes.
Okay, so, if it works for you, then you can keep doing it as long as you can retrieve it. And maybe then change the subject line so that you can understand what part of that thread you would want to refer to later. So that's an idea. But we like to say the 3-4 rule. If you've gone back and forth 3 or 4 times, pick up the phone.
Even in that survey phone, after you pick up the phone, sometimes just if you want to keep that email thread, pick up the phone, have a conversation, and then just send a quick summary email summarizing the phone call.
Right.
That way you still have the email thread.
I like that idea very much. I like that. You still have the email, but you've ironed out some of the confusion, and you summarize it for whoever is involved in that. So good. Thank you. Good point for that. Ask permission before sending large attachments. Always a good idea. Tell somebody it's large. When is a good time for me to send it so that you can open it, at the appropriate time. So, all right. And I'm going through this a little quickly now towards the end since we have about 10 more minutes and I want to have time for more questions. Acronyms and jargon, especially for a multicultural company. Make sure that if you're using acronyms and jargon that everybody understands. You pointed out in a previous email we did about the PASS program. That was an internal email. But if everybody doesn't understand that, you have lost people. So acronyms and jargon, just be real careful about that. I'm sure you all have your SIG files, a full signature. That should go standard on every email, so that everybody can find you and they see your title, your email, your phone number, and your name. So this is mine for Brody, but I'm sure all of you have that, and just make sure that you do on every email. Things not to use, things to be careful of. What does this mean when you use all caps?
Screaming.
Yeah, screaming. I actually had a funny experience with somebody that wrote this to me for a long time, and then suddenly I realized that he was 98 years old, and he couldn't see very well, and he needed to write it like that. So that's a good reason to write all caps, but other than that, not all caps. Backgrounds. Color can be okay in the text, but not in the background. It's really hard to read, really hard to read. Unnecessary graphics, controversial quotes. I suggest in business not to use quotes, controversial or not. Now, sometimes quotes at the very end might work, but generally no. Scripty fonts, we mentioned this, avoid them, and too many exclamation points. Be careful about this. I've had managers tell me that sometimes they get a very enthusiastic employee who has lots of exclamation points, and it somehow dilutes the message because it calls attention to their enthusiasm. Maybe they're young, maybe they're female. There are all these biases that go along with too many exclamation points. So use them judiciously. Use them judiciously. And emoticons, definitely fine for friends, fine in text, not in business emails. This is one of the most important points. When you've taken the time, you've written your email, how many of you actually proofread and edit your emails?
I do. This is Dee, I do.
You do?
Yes,
good.
I do.
Good. It's one of the best things you can do to make sure you don't have mistakes. It helps with catching grammatical mistakes, punctuation mistakes, wording. I am a professional writer, and I go through my emails, and I cut out all the words I can that are not necessary. I do that with almost every email. I just see if I can make it shorter, more direct, and I cut things out. Also, spelling. Spell check doesn't always work. You know that, right? It doesn't always work. It might what you write might be a word, but it might not be the word you meant to use in that sentence. So edit and proofread, and if it's really important, have somebody else look at it, depending on how important that is. Don't be shy about that. And sometimes for speakers when English is not your first language, it's also good to have other people look at it to make sure that you've written it as you wanted to, respond in a timely way. When should you respond? If somebody writes you an email, we all get so many. What's a good way to handle responding in a timely way? What do you do?
I tell people to respond within 24 hours or let them know. I mean, some of them have those auto-responders that say, I'm out of town, I won't be back until July 2nd. So.
Right. That's right. But if you are there, my suggestion is if you can't handle whatever the email's about, if it's too complex or you don't have time to deal with it, write a short email saying, acknowledging, I've gotten your email, I'll respond in the next 2 days, or I'll respond by the end of the day. Just acknowledge that you got this email and you're paying attention to it, but just not right at that moment. That is very helpful to them, so they don't have to bug you again. Did you get my email? And I've had that happen. Yeah. So respond if you can within an hour and say, I'll get to it tomorrow. Just let them know. Here's another interesting idea, like with the phone. Don't send an email to somebody who works close to you. That if you can see them, go visit them. Now, sometimes this doesn't work because they're very busy. But if you can avoid flooding their inbox and you work physically close to them, try talking to them instead of sending an email, unless you absolutely have to have a record. Again, these are recommendations, folks. There are going to be times when it doesn't make sense for you to do that. You know, somebody's too busy, they don't have time to talk to you, better send an email. But if they work close to you and you can manage it, don't flood their inbox. And here's a very interesting idea. Ask people that you email often and who email you often what their preferences are. For example, would they like to get one email that has 3 different subjects? Or would they like to have 3 separate emails, each one a different subject? If you email somebody a lot, it's good to work that out, because some people like it one way and some like it another. And tell people what you like. Tell people the best way to write an effective email for you. That is, sometimes people are shy about saying what they like, but it's very helpful. All right, a quick summary. We talked about a focus, the importance of a focused subject line, putting your main points first, keeping them short, a layout that's easy to read, good grammar and punctuation, not for confidential or sensitive subjects, no big attachments, or at least ask if you can send a big attachment and when. Limit forwarding and reply to all. I think we missed the reply to all, but why is that a pain sometimes, a reply to all?
Because the message isn't germane to everybody.
That's right. It's just really often germane to the person sending the original email. So limit reply to all to just people that need to hear your reply. So if somebody's calling a meeting, right, only the person calling the meeting needs to hear that you've got a dentist appointment and let's do it another day.
What do you think about BCC?
I think BCC, blind copy, is a little bit sneaky. It's because if somebody finds out that you've done that, they may feel, what are you hiding? So generally, I don't like BCC.
Even if you're writing to 20 people, all of a sudden you have to scale down and you see 20 people's names, and then you're not sure that everybody wants his or her name in the 2.
For that reason, you don't. That's right. You don't always want everybody's email to be to be advertised. So for that reason, you can do it in that case. Okay. Other cases, though, no, because people tend to think you're trying to hide something.
Okay.
And no emoticons. We talked about that. And edit and proofread. And the winning message template, the summary statement, then comes the what, the so what, the now what, and the thank you. And one way to think about this is look at this beautiful bouquet. You can't really see all the different flowers. It just, overall, it looks nice. Try to write your emails not like this, but like this. Elegant, simple, a simple line that flows through, every point is distinct rather than all mushed together. And another way of saying it is that what you want to do is you want to serve up your emails on a silver platter so that the recipient doesn't have to work. It's just everything is on a silver platter. And I like these last 3 images. If you're thinking about writing emails, these last 3 images are especially relevant. Now, it's 12 o'clock and it's 1 o'clock and we are finished. Just in 30 seconds, do you have any questions that I can answer for you that you haven't asked?
So, Carol, I had a question.
Yes.
Of course, we all know people who have like as far as communication styles, the verbal communication styles. Some people like giving points directly to the points. Some people like a lot of the romance stuff, the fluff, how's your day doing, things of that nature. Should that have any bearing on how we address an email to that person if we know there's a certain communication style?
Well, I think if you know the person's communication style, I think it's fine to use that if you know what they like. I still would, if they like lots and lots of words and they don't come to the point directly, I wouldn't use those elements. But if they like to be real personal, how are you, how was your weekend, if you know that they really like that, then you're going to target that audience, and I would use that part of it, but not the other parts that you feel don't communicate well. So I think it's always good to know somebody's style and what's important to them. So to the extent that you can do that and still be clear, do it.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so I want to thank you all for this, for participating, for sharing yourselves with us and your ideas, and I hope we will come back again. Write us an email.
Thank you.
And have a wonderful week and spring, and thank you.